In the quiet suburbs of Long Island, New York, where the streets whisper secrets under the glow of streetlights, lived Rebecca Koster, a 24-year-old beacon of light in a world that often feels too dim. Rebecca, or Becky as her friends called her, was the kind of woman who turned heads not just for her striking beauty, but for the unfiltered joy she carried like a flame, with her long auburn hair cascading in waves, piercing green eyes that sparkled with mischief, and a laugh that could chase away the gloomiest clouds. She embodied the reckless freedom of youth. She worked as a bartender at a bustling local spot called O'Malley's, slinging drinks with a flirtatious wink and stories that kept patrons lingering long after last call. But beneath that vibrant exterior lay a young woman chasing dreams bigger than the island confines. Whispers of moving to the city, starting her own art studio, fueled by the intricate tattoos that adorned her skin like personal talismans. Becky's life was a tapestry of simple pleasures. Weekend hikes through the pine-scented trails of nearby parks, late-night drives with the windows down blasting indie rock, and gatherings with her tight-knit circle of friends who adored her infectious energy. Her family, rooted deeply in the community, saw her as their golden child, the middle daughter who bridged the gap between her older sister's practicality and her younger brother's wild streak. Holidays were sacred. Thanksgiving feasts filled with her mother's famous apple pie, where Becky would sketch whimsical portraits of relatives on napkins, turning ordinary moments into cherished memories. Yet even in this idyllic bubble, there were cracks, subtle warnings ignored in the haze of youth. Becky had a habit of trusting too easily, of seeing the good in strangers who lurked in the shadows of nightlife. She dated sporadically, always with an open heart. But her intuition, sharp as it was, sometimes dulled under the neon haze of bar lights and cheap cocktails. It was a crisp Friday evening in early December 2009 when the threads of Becky's life began to unravel. The air bit with the promise of winter, frost etching delicate patterns on car windshields, as she slipped into a sleek black dress that hugged her curves like a second skin. Her butterfly tattoo, a delicate masterpiece, inked on her left ankle during a rebellious college summer, peeked out from strappy heels, a symbol of transformation she wore with pride. "Girls' night out," she texted her best friend, Sarah, with a string of heart emojis. O'Malley's was packed that night, a cacophony of clinking glasses, booming laughter, and the thrum of bass-heavy music that pulsed like a heartbeat. Becky arrived fashionably late, her cheeks flushed from the chill, immediately diving into shots of tequila that burned sweet down her throat. Friends piled in, Sarah with her boyfriend, a rowdy group from the bar staff, and the evening blurred into a whirlwind of dances, stolen kisses on the cheek, and promises of adventures yet to come. As the clock ticked past midnight, the energy shifted. Becky, 3 drinks deep and riding a high of camaraderie, stepped outside for a smoke, the cold air slapping her face like a forgotten warning. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, something innocuous, perhaps a wrong number flirtation, but she laughed it off, pocketing it as she scanned the parking lot for a cab. Long Island nights could stretch endlessly, but Becky waved goodbye to Sarah with a hug that lingered a beat too long. "Call me when you're home safe," Sarah urged, her voice laced with the fuzzy concern of inebriation. Becky nodded, flashing that trademark grin. "Always do, babe. Love you." She vanished into the shadows of the lot, heels clicking against gravel, unaware that the man watching from the shadows of his yellow cab had eyes like voids, cold, calculating, and hungry for the chaos only he could unleash. The next morning dawned gray and unforgiving. Sarah woke to a pounding headache and an unanswered text. "Home yet?" First panic crept in like fog off the sound. Calls went straight to voicemail. Becky's apartment, a cozy walk-up filled with half-finished canvases and fairy lights, stood eerily silent. Friends rallied, combing bars and clubs, but no trace. By evening, the Koster family home buzzed with dread. Her mother pacing the kitchen, father's calls to police stations echoing hollowly. She's probably crashed at a friend's, they told themselves, clinging to denial. But deep down, a primal fear stirred. Becky, the girl who lit up rooms, had stepped into the night and never returned. What horrors awaited in the unraveling hours? The cab that pulled up wasn't just a ride, it was a gateway to nightmare. Little did they know, the predator had already chosen his prey. Evans Ganthier, a 30-year-old cab driver, with a face as unremarkable as faded wallpaper, idled his vehicle that night not by chance but by design. Port Jefferson Station knew him as the quiet type. Polite nods at the gas station, a nod to the bottle of cheap whiskey he nursed in solitude. But behind the wheel his mind festered with resentments, a cocktail of rejection and rage, simmering from a string of failed relationships and dead-end jobs. Becky's laughter from the bar had pierced his isolation like a siren's call, drawing him from the periphery into the hunt. He watched her exit, noted the sway in her step, the vulnerability in her solitary stance. "Need a ride, miss?" His voice was silk over gravel, disarming in its normalcy. She climbed in, oblivious to the lock clicking shut like the jaws of a trap. The drive was unremarkable at first. Small talk about the weather, the bar's crowd, her plans for the weekend. Becky leaned back, scrolling her phone, the cab's heater humming a false comfort. A sudden swerve. A cloth pressed to her face, chloroform's sickly sweet haze enveloping her senses. She fought, nails raking his arm. A muffled scream swallowed by the engine's roar. Blackness claimed her. The last image, her fluttering eyelids and the butterfly on her ankle, soon to be severed from her story. When consciousness flickered back, Becky awoke to a nightmare beyond comprehension. Bound in the dim basement of Ganthier's rundown rental, a concrete tomb reeking of mildew and motor oil, she realized the depth of her peril. The walls, stained with forgotten leaks, echoed her whimpers. Ganthier loomed above, his face a mask of detached curiosity. Tools glinting on a workbench like instruments of some profane surgery. "You're perfect," he murmured, not in affection, but in the cold appraisal of a collector. Hours blurred into a symphony of terror. Blows that split skin. Questions barked about her life, her secrets, as if he sought to devour her essence before the end. The butterfly tattoo, that defiant emblem of her spirit, caught his eye, a flaw in his plan for anonymity. With surgical precision born of dark obsession, he carved it free. The blades whisper a eulogy to her identity. Blood pooled like spilled ink, but in his frenzy, he overlooked one telltale mark. A faint scar on her wrist from a childhood fall, a whisper of her past that would later unravel his facade. As the search for Becky intensified, whispers of foul play slithered through the tight-knit Long Island community. Flyers plastered on lampposts fluttered in the winter wind. Her smiling face, a snapshot from a beach day. Green eyes alive with promise, begging for leads. Police canvassed O'Malley's, interviewing patrons who recalled her vivacious banter, but memories blurred under the haze of alcohol. Sarah, racked with guilt, replayed their last hug, her mind tormented by what-ifs. "She got into a cab," one witness murmured, describing a yellow sedan idling suspiciously. Detectives noted it down, but the trail seemed to evaporate into the foggy dawn. Becky's phone pinged sporadically, texts from her number to family, casual check-ins that masked the horror unfolding. "Home safe, love you," one read, sent hours after her vanishing. A cruel taunt from the abyss. Meanwhile, 70 miles away in the desolate fields of North Stonington, Connecticut, a jogger stumbled upon a nightmare etched in frost-kissed grass. On December 5, 2009, just a day after Becky's disappearance, the mutilated remains of a young woman lay discarded like refuse, wrapped in a blood-soaked blanket amid overgrown weeds. The body was a grotesque puzzle. Fingers and toes severed with brutal precision, hair shorn to the scalp, teeth extracted in a frenzy of erasure. Deep stab wounds crisscrossed her torso, each a testament to savage rage. But the most chilling detail, the butterfly tattoo, that inked symbol of her spirit, had been surgically excised, leaving a ragged void on her ankle. Authorities dubbed her Jane Doe, her identity stripped away in a calculated bid for anonymity. Autopsy whispers revealed the timeline. Death by multiple stab wounds, post-mortem mutilation to thwart recognition. Toxicology hinted at a struggle. Traces of sedatives lingering like ghosts. The news rippled like a shockwave. Headlines screaming horrific mutilation. Murder shocks northeast. Long Island held its breath as connections emerged. Becky's description matched the victim's build, the timeline too coincidental to ignore. Dental records were useless without teeth, fingerprints obliterated. But one overlooked scar, a faint crescent on her wrist. From a playground mishap at age 10 became the key. Weeks dragged into agony. February 2010 brought the breakthrough. DNA confirmed it was Becky. The family shattered, her mother collapsing in sobs, father vowing justice. Ganthier's name surfaced from cab logs and bar surveillance. His unremarkable facade cracking under scrutiny, arrested initially for lesser charges. The noose tightened as evidence mounted. Blood in his basement, tools matching the wounds, and those damning texts from Becky's phone traced to his possession. Interrogations peeled back layers of depravity. Ganthier, a drifter with a history of violence, confessed fragments, luring her from the bar with promises of a safe ride. The argument escalating in his Port Jefferson hovel. Stabs fueled by rejection, then the frantic dismemberment to erase her. But why the tattoo? A trophy, perhaps, or a final act of possession? As trial loomed, the horror deepened, taunting messages to her kin, prolonging their torment. Becky's story, once vibrant, now a cautionary specter haunting true crime annals. The basement where hell unfolded became ground zero for forensics. Stains on concrete whispered of the struggle. Luminol glowed like accusing stars, mapping blood spatter and arcs of violence. Ganthier's tools, a serrated knife, pliers, shears bore microscopic traces of her DNA, irrefutable links. Neighbors recalled odd noises that night, muffled cries dismissed as TV static. As charges upgraded to second-degree murder, the courtroom buzzed with anticipation. Prosecutors painted him as a monster in plain sight, preying on trust. Defense claimed accident. A lover's spat gone wrong, but evidence screamed premeditation. In the Suffolk County courtroom, spring 2011, Evans Ganthier finally opened his mouth and hell poured out. He never looked at the Koster family. Eyes fixed on the table, voice flat as a corpse, he described Becky's last hours like he was reading a grocery list. How she laughed at first in the cab, trusting. How the chloroform made her eyes roll white. How she woke up zip-tied to a metal pole in his basement. Barefoot on freezing concrete, begging. He told the jury he just wanted to keep her quiet, then admitted, stabbing her 27 times because she wouldn't stop screaming my name, each thrust deliberate, each pause between stabs to watch her face change. Then came the part that silenced the room. After she was dead, he said, he sat beside the body for hours, stroked her hair, talked to her like she was still listening. He decided no one could ever know who she was, so he spent the entire night erasing Rebecca Koster from existence, teeth pulled with pliers, fingertips sliced off, scalp shaved, acid poured over the prints. The butterfly tattoo offended him most. He called it her little flag of freedom. So, he peeled it away with a box cutter while humming, along to the radio upstairs. He folded the skin neatly, kept it in a plastic bag as a reminder. Police found that bag, hidden behind his water heater months later, the ink still faintly visible, wings curled like a dead moth. When the prosecutor asked why he sent those fake "I'm okay" texts to her family, Ganthier shrugged. I liked knowing they were still looking. For her while she was right under their town. The judge had to call recess because Becky's mother was screaming. On October 31st, 2011, Evans Ganthier was sentenced to 25 years to life. He showed no emotion. Not when the judge called him a void-wearing human. Skin. Not when Becky's father stood 3 feet away and promised, voice shaking, you will rot, and she will still be loved. But there was one detail the monster never anticipated. That childhood scar on Becky's left wrist, a tiny half-moon from when she was 9 and fell off her bike, had been forgotten even by her family. Ganthier burned her fingertips, pulled her teeth, flayed her tattoo. But he never noticed the scar. It was too small, too ordinary. In his frenzy to erase every unique mark, he overlooked the most ordinary one of all. That scar, invisible under blood and bruising, is what gave the medical examiner the final confirmation when DNA alone wasn't enough. A 9-year-old girl's clumsy accident became the unbreakable thread that tied Rebecca Koster back to the people who loved her. Today her butterfly lives on, inked on her little sister's ankle, on Sarah's shoulder blade, on strangers who never met her, but heard the story and chose to carry beauty instead of horror. Ganthier rots in Clinton Correctional, maximum security, no parole until 2036, if ever. The tattoo he stole shriveled and turned to dust in an evidence locker. Wings finally free. Rebecca's light was never his to extinguish. The scar was proof some things cannot be cut away.